Matthew chapter 8, and we begin there with verse 23 through 27. And this, of course, is Jesus demonstrating his authority, demonstrating his power over storms, over the elements of nature. Look at verses 23 and 24. Now when he got into a boat, his disciples followed him, and suddenly a great tempest arose on the sea, so that the boat covered with the waves. It was covered with the waves, but he was asleep. If you go back to verse 18, what did Jesus tell his disciples? To depart to the other side, which would imply what? Get in the boat, right? And what do we see here? That they waited for Jesus to get into the boat before they followed him. And there are some who are saying, well, you know, this is an act of disobedience. But I beg to differ, and I'll share why. They waited until after Christ got into in the boat because they were observing the same protocol that many, obviously, from ancient times even to our day, it's observed. And on every ship on the waters on earth, especially the naval ships of all nations, who gets on the boat first? Those of the highest rank. Who leaves the boat first? Those of the highest rank. And so what does that suggest concerning the disciples? That they recognize Jesus as what? He's of the highest rank. They recognized him as Lord. And I want to emphasize that as we go through the course of this miracle and others. They recognized his authority. They recognized that he is Christ the Lord. Now, verse 24, you have the word tempest. And there is, again, I've really encouraged word studies. And tempest is from a term from which we get seismology, from our word seismology. And what is that? It's a study of earthquakes. And so, no doubt the storm that we're looking at, it merited such a description. Matthew says the boat was covered with waves. This isn't the open ocean. This is a lake. This is the Sea of Galilee. And granted, it was no small pond of water. It was rather, significant in size. But still, you have this storm, this tempest. Waves were rising high above the boat, breaking on it, gradually filling with water. And the severity of the storm was evident in the fact that the disciples on the boat, many of whom were what? They were fishermen. They're accustomed to water. They're used to this. But they were what? They were scared. And they cried out, Lord. Again, they recognized him as Lord. You get on the boat first, we will follow. They recognized him as Lord here. They say, Lord, save us, we are perishing. Many travelers who would go to Palestine would comment on the violent storms which so often occurred there on the Sea of Galilee. And in the midst of this great storm, the text plainly says that Christ was asleep. Now, I wanted to bring up the idea of the tempest. This just wasn't, a little thunderstorm, some heavy winds. This was violent. This was the word from which we get the study of earthquakes. This was violent storm, and here Jesus is asleep. But the grammar of the phrase is what I wanted to share with you. The grammar itself suggests a dramatic contrast. Here you have the storm raging. The disciples panicked, and Christ was asleep. a dramatic contrast going here, and that's what the text itself suggests. That's what the grammar suggests. And there are things that certainly I think are worthy of our consideration, and I want to share that as we begin our study. Number one, we're impressed with the fact that Jesus needed sleep. He needed sleep, which shows what? He was human. It shows the true humanity. Do what? Never got enough. What did he just tell the scribe beforehand? There are many nights you're going to spend with nowhere to lay your head. You know, it's just sleep. And you remember Mark 1:35 was another passage where Jesus got up before sunlight and departed to a solitary place and there prayed. He would sacrifice this sleep that we know was very much needed because of the stress and the strain on his body and on his mind, that he would need to catch sleep whenever and wherever he could. So again, you know, I didn't want to just fly by this without looking at the fact that this text is strongly suggesting and insinuating, revealing his true humanity. Yes, ma'am. I have no idea. I have never.
It wasn't a ship.
Yeah, it was a boat.
20 feet long.
Do what?
I say around 20 feet. It was a fishing boat. It wasn't a large vessel at all.
Yeah, it couldn't. Wasn't large, but it had to be sufficient enough to have 13 people on board. So. You know, it's not one of these massive cruise lines that are going across, you know, the waters. This was a relatively small boat. And, you know, it was enough of a boat that Jesus was down there asleep. And they had to go down to him. So, again, I agree with Charles. It wasn't anything major. Now, we're impressed also. Not only that he needed sleep, we're impressed that he could sleep. You know, how many times some people sleep really well in the midst of tremendous thunderstorms and lightning. I don't know how many of us would sleep very well when you're in the midst of a body of water with the winds and the waves tossing you to and fro. I don't know how many of us could sleep under that, especially when you look at disciples here who were accustomed to water, professional fishermen. That was their business, and they were panicked. You know, they were probably sleepy too, weren't they? I mean, they were with Christ, and so, but they couldn't sleep, but he could. And maybe we're impressed with that, but obviously Jesus was at peace in his mind. Jesus was at peace in his soul, that he can trust in the love and the care of the Father. It all had to do with his relationship with the Father, a relationship that we see even from Mark 1:35. He would be willing to sacrifice much needed sleep to get along with God, to communicate with God, to have this, to at least share the example with us of the importance of a very strong personal relationship with the Father. Now, you know, obviously, many individuals, I think, you know, the question that some have said, do we crave the ability to sleep like Jesus in the midst of storms, both literally and figuratively? I would dare say that, you know, we would love to be able to just sleep whenever and wherever, no matter the circumstance. Take your Bibles to Proverbs Chapter 3. Someone read Proverbs Chapter 3. Let me see. Let's read verses 21 through 24.
My son, let them not depart from your eyes. Keep sound wisdom and discretion, so they will be life to your soul and grace to your neck. Then you will walk safely in your way, and your foot will not stumble. When you lie down, you will not be afraid. Yes, you will lie down, and your sleep will be sweet.
You'll lie down and your sleep will be what? If you desire sweet sleep, something you can't say very quickly, sweet sleep, what do you need? You need to have what? You need to keep sound wisdom and discretion. What is sound wisdom and discretion? Well, trust in the Father for sure, but that's all developed through a study of the Word. Having a deep relationship, a love for the truth, and, as we develop in our faith and we have this stronger faith in God, and we can put our faith and trust that no matter what happens through the night, I can have sweet sleep. Many times, individuals can't sleep well at night because they're troubled by regrets, mistakes, and we're all prone to that, and we're human. We're going to make mistakes. Yeah, well, and it's true to an extent, but nowadays it's not just the elderly who maybe have trouble sleeping. I know many young individuals, high school, college kids, that are struggling to sleep. And a lot of times it's what? The pressure of a test the next day. They can't sleep. They can't get that sound sleep. But that's aside the point. The point I'm getting at is, in order for us to have sweet sleep and to be able to possibly sleep like Jesus in the midst of storms, both literal and figurative, is to have a great relationship with the Word of God, a great relationship with God the Father. And we can rest secure. Yes, sir.
I think the instance, there are times since I'm in this stage too, that I have difficulty sleeping because of arthritis may bother me. But that type of thing, I still can have the sweet sleep, even though I may off and on get it up, because I am not worried, I'm not fretful, I'm not discomforted by threats. I know I'm safe in the arms of the Lord.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, the physical aspect of man, it is what it is. And there are good days, there are bad days. But the soul can sleep sweetly if it's in good status with the Father. We can rest. And so again, you look at the fact that we're impressed with the fact that Jesus needed to sleep, which is a sign of his true humanity. That he could sleep, which is a sign of that trust and in the Father's care and love for him. But we bring all these thoughts together. I'd like to share what one writer observed. The Sea of Galilee is about 13 miles long and 8 miles wide. Again, rather significant body of water. It was not unusual for violent storms to suddenly sweep across the water. Jesus, undoubtedly, being God, knew the storm was coming. Knowing the storm was coming, Jesus, based on what he does to the storm, this is a little added from the quote, he could have prevented it altogether, right? If he knew it was coming, he could have prevented it. He has control over the elements of nature. But he permitted it, and that he might teach his disciples a lesson. Jesus was asleep because he rested confidently in the will of his Father. And this is what the disciples should have done. Instead, they became frightened and accused Jesus of not caring. And that's Mark chapter 4, verse 38, where they would have the audacity to accuse the Lord of not caring for them. And which is quite astonishing, but yet, as we go further in our journey here, we're going to be astonished time and time again over some things that the disciples do and say. But I think it's significant here what Matthew is doing. Again, I want to a plot, an effort. Of course, he was guided by the Holy Spirit, so it's ultimately God, of course. But in Matthew's account, when you're just reading the account, you're impressed with a contrast here. Here are his disciples who should have had great faith. They had been with Jesus, walked with Jesus, heard Jesus, saw the many miracles Jesus had done. They should have had great faith, but they had weak faith. Who had the great faith earlier in this chapter? The centurion. A Roman centurion who didn't walk with Jesus, didn't observe and listen to everything Jesus had taught for this period of time, hadn't witnessed a tremendous amount of miracles, probably did some ultimately because, and he heard something because he came to Jesus knowing that Jesus could do what no other man could, and that is to heal his servant. But still you have the great faith of a Roman centurion and weak faith from the chosen disciples. To me, it's absolutely astonishing. Yes, sir.
I can tell you, that centurion wasn't spitting salt water like those boys on the ship were. That has a lot to do with your tone and your brain.
Well, that is true too. But we're going to get to a point here in just a little bit that I think brings it all home. Yes, sir.
I was thinking about both have faith. I think the passage of the chapters illustrating the need of faith in every aspect, like the centurion faith that God is able to do what he said. But I think Jesus is chosen this violent storm that is life-threatening, that would probably, in fact, would have perished otherwise, to let us know no matter how violent, no matter how threatening, it may seem, God can overcome. And we can have victory. It doesn't matter how threatening it may. In fact, in these days, we threat of war and all this stuff. We don't need to fret if we have our faith in the Lord.
That's right, and that's key. And I think again, so 1 John 4:4, greater is he who is in you than he who is in the world. You know, we can have that kind of confidence, and Paul speaks of that confidence. And in Romans chapter 8, we know that all things work together for good to those who love the Lord. We know that's verse 28, verse 18. The sufferings of this present time are not worthy to be compared to the glory that's going to be revealed to us. Just again, this relationship and this perception that we have, this life here on earth is for the reason and purpose of being obedient to the Father and remaining faithful to the Father until the end, prepping ourselves for an eternity with the Father in heaven. Your purpose on earth isn't to achieve great fame and fortune, because at the end of time, those things are going to perish. Those things aren't going to go with us. So all that matters in this life is preparing ourselves to be right with God. And this is what Matthew's account is doing, is making us realize who Jesus really is and focusing on the Jews, his target. This Jesus you've been waiting on. This is the Messiah, the Christ, the Savior of the world. And he's the one you need to be developing a relationship with. And when you have that relationship, then you can rest peaceably. You can have this calm spirit. But another thing is that though Jesus was asleep physically, he was very much awake spiritually. He was completely aware of what was going on. He was completely in control of all things, and he's control of the elements surrounding him. And there's something else that we'll look at that I think is interesting, at least compelling to think about. But there are indeed many troubles which may appear to us great and at times overwhelming. But what Brother Charles was saying is, in the presence of Jesus, there can be peace. There can be calm. You can have sweet sleep, so to speak. Verses 25 through 27. Then his disciples came to him and awoke him, saying, Lord, save us, we are perishing. But he said to them, Why are you fearful, O you of little faith? Then he arose and rebuked the winds and the sea, and there was a great calm. And so the men marveled, saying, Who can this be, that even the winds and the sea obey him? Now, from Mark's account, we learned that the ship departed at nightfall. We see that in Mark chapter 4 and in verse 35, which accompanied with the storm made visibility very limited, which would add to the to the fear and the fact that they were scared and that they were in great danger. But had the master of the winds not been with them, and I think Brother Charles was making this clear, this was such a storm that was life-threatening and would have been life-threatening, but Jesus was there. Jesus was on board, and they had him with them, and their fear demonstrated a lack of faith, a lack of understanding in the one who, though physically asleep, was very much awake and aware spiritually. Verse 26, why did Jesus rebuke the disciples? Yeah, I mean, he says what? Why do you fear, you have little faith? Yes, that's true. He rebukes them for their fear, their little faith. And the reason I bring that up is in teaching, sometimes you get comments and sometimes you read things in preparation for class. There were some who said that Jesus rebuked his disciples because they woke him up. Yeah, he needed sleep, he could sleep, but yet he's mad because the disciples woke him up. Rest assured that that's not why Jesus rebuked them. He rebuked them because if he is the Lord, and here's the point, if he is the Lord, which they already acknowledged him, when the fact that they wouldn't get on the ship until after he got on, recognized him as Lord. In the midst of the storm, as we said, they were fearful and they cried out, Lord. They recognized him as Lord. So if the Lord was with him, the question is, would the Lord and these men, would they die on the lake in a boating accident? You know? Not with the Lord. I mean, the Lord had a purpose. He had works to get done. The Lord had a mission. And a storm at sea wasn't going to bring an end to his mission. So, apart from the Lord, yeah, they could have perished. But the Lord was there. And he's rebuking the disciples because, yeah, who am I? I'm the Lord. Why would you possibly think that we're going to perish in a boating accident in the midst of a storm? I've got work to do. I've got a mission. And I'm not going to perish. The Father's going to carry us through. The Father's in complete control.
Jesus questioned his Father on the cross. Why did he forsake him?
No, that was the... we'll have to have that study at a different time. Yes, sir.
I think also bring out that he uses fear and faith. Fear and faith are in conflict. Fear, in fact, it paralyzes you. Fear keeps you from doing what you know you should do because of your control. Fear controls you. That's how governments
Right.
use that. Bullies use that. They can rule over you. And so Satan can do that. He can cause us to be fearful of things that, just like the Israelites not going into the promised land in 3 years. They heard the spies report. They were so afraid. They ignored God's promise. I'm going to give the land too. And that can happen to us too. Where fear can keep us from speaking to others about Christ because we may be afraid of what they might think or whatever it is. There's a whole host of things that we should be doing in the service of the Lord. But fear instead of faith. It says, I trust the Lord. I know I'm right. And he's with me.
That's right. There's the big difference, and just so you know that I'm not skirting the question, the comment that you said about questioning the Father. Uh, what did Jesus pray for the night before in the Garden of Gethsemane? If there's any other way, take this cup away from me. He wasn't looking forward to the cross, yes, but probably equally so is he wasn't looking forward to being separated from the Father, because he had never been separated from the Father. You got the true humanity and the true deity all 100% combined in one. So a moment of humanity doesn't take away his 100% divinity. It's just he's sitting there going, I've never been separated from the Father. And this, 6 hours is going to be the only time that I will ever be separated from the Father. And, perhaps part of the question in the Garden of Gethsemane was, is there any other way? Was he talking about the cross? I've always suspected it's the cross, but it could equally be the separation. That, I don't want to be separated from you, no, not for a single hour, and let alone 6 hours. So it could be any number of things, but it's certainly worthy of further study. But in nothing does it is Jesus questioning God in the sense of, are you sure you got this under control? Because he was purely confident that the Father's will was going to be done. That was his prayer, not my will, but yours be done. Yes, sir.
He was still human.
Yeah.
So he's going to, even though with all of his faith in the Lord, he's still going to have some bit of fear because he does have that human side.
That's absolutely. I mean, it's that humanity that just. If we say it was pure God and no humanity, then did he really suffer? We know that he suffered because he was 100% man and 100% God. Well, yes, sir.
Fear of the Lord doesn't mean that you're afraid of the Lord.
Right.
A lot of people misinterpret that. Fear of the Lord and obeying the commandments. It doesn't mean you're afraid of the Lord.
Yeah. Depending on who we're talking about, demons were afraid when they trembled at him. They believe and they trembled, but fear could be just a reverential respect, not a fright. And that's very true.
It could be a fear, both could be a fear of displeasing God. But as far as the demon's concerned, they know destruction is concerned. As far as a Christian's concerned, I fear displeasing God because I want to please him.
Right.
And I know that his justice will have to bring punishment on disobedience. So it's a healthy fear. It's like if you're near a rattlesnake, you don't go up and pet him. You're fear of this, you're going to respect
The danger, yeah.
That's a poor example of God. And I was thinking about there was a difference here. Since they were not to be fearful, they were to act on faith. What should they have done instead? I think they should have been like the centurion. Instead of being fearful, oh, we're going to destroy, don't you care for us? They're out of their faith. They would go to him, Lord, we know you can help us, you can protect us.
Exactly.
You act on the faith instead of letting fear yank it out.
And who knows what the true test was or what the true lesson was. Jesus was prepared to go either way. Either they exhibit good faith and trust that he can guide them safely through, or he could rebuke them for a lack of faith. Yes, sir.
David, like you said a while ago, Jesus was 100% God, 100% human being. He had God's nature, he had human nature.
Right.
I see him that night in the Garden of Gethsemane when the sweat poured off him like blood drops falling to the ground. And he first asked God, remove this cup from me, take it from me. I see human nature. I don't want to be in a condition like that, knowing what's fixing to happen to me. He was in agony. Agony is the point of almost death, right there, in a mental condition. I see human nature. But the latter part, priority was doing God's will.
That's right. But in actuality, you actually see dual. You see physical and spiritual in his prayer, because the spiritual aspect is the fact that he's praying to the Father. So the humanity is absolutely not going to be minimized here. The 100% humanity, he's not looking forward to the pain of the cross. He's not looking forward to the cruel and the humiliation that's coming his way. He knew that's the hour for which he came, and he was fully prepared to do it if that was his will. But at the same time, the fact that he was praying to the Father, the spiritual aspect is, I think, equally so now, upon thinking about it, that he's praying that he didn't want to be separated from the Father. He's never had to experience that. And for those of us who, when we are living in sin, we are separated from him. And to me, the passion in the heart of Jesus not wanting to have that separation and wanting to be together, to be one with the Father, that ought to be every person's desire, 100%. We shouldn't want to willfully live in sin and separated from the Father and get comfortable being separated from the Father. Because if we're comfortable separated from the Father here, we're going to be uncomfortably separated from Him for all eternity. And again, we'll have to study that, and we don't want to dwell on that. That's not the purpose of our study. But it would be a rich study indeed. Verses 25 and 27, 26, he's rebuking the disciples, and ultimately I think he's saying, you know me to be the Lord. Why would you think we're going to perish in a boating accident? But the disciples had many reasons, as we said before, to have had great faith. They'd witnessed even that day Jesus performing great miracles, that he was demonstrating his authority and his power. They saw the great faith of the Gentile centurion who trusted Jesus to the point that, I know that you've spoken a word, and I know that I'm going to go back and my servant's going to be healed. He had that tremendous faith and confidence that Jesus was going to follow through. And most of all, the reason they should have had great faith is they had Jesus in the boat. That's just astonishing to me. But these disciples, they were handpicked by the Lord, yes, but they're still people. And that's the reason that we can maybe identify with them some respect over the failures and the shortcomings and the weaknesses. It's easy to say it from this side. How could they have such weak faith? But we're not in that boat. We're not in that storm. We're not experiencing what they experienced. And who knows what we would have said and when and where. But after rebuking his disciples for their little faith, Jesus rebuked the winds and the sea. Now, of course, as a result, the great calm, the disciples says, what? Who can this be? What do you mean, who can this be? You know him to be the Lord. You know him to be God. What do you mean, who can this be? You have to think Jesus is, come on, guys. I handpicked you out of a multitude of disciples. How could you question this? Again, what I say, we're going to be astonished time and time again over what they would say, over what they would do. But there are several things that I want to share, and I know we just won't be able to complete it. Are there any comments, any questions? I know we're not moving at a fast pace, and some may not appreciate that, but my style of teaching has always been a class is going to be as rich as the assembly makes it, and participation is what I crave, and the direction that studies go is my passion. So I hope that you're not disappointed in the lack of fervent speed, but there is a rich material that we're sharing together, and I hope hope you're appreciative of that. Yes, ma'am.
I was just thinking, Jesus chose these men, but they weren't ready to take over and understand and do everything at that point.
Right.
That's why they're with him. That's why he's showing them and walking them through this and helping build them up. So I think they were in that position. Yes, I believe, but like the one father that said, Lord, I believe, but help my unbelief.
Yes, absolutely.
They were still growing, and it's the same thing with a new Christian. Okay, I'm a Christian, I've accepted, I've been baptized, bam, I blew it already. And we get discouraged with ourselves, but we have to realize we have to grow too.
That's
I think that's what these guys want.
absolutely true, and I appreciate you bringing that. I don't remember the passage, but Mark 9:24. Do what?
It was when the father brought his child to be healed, and he said, do you believe? I can. He said, Lord, I believe, help my unbelief.
That's and it's beautiful because that is a great summation of the disciples here. They believe, but they have moments of that unbelief. Help my unbelief, very true. There was a hand back. Yes, sir.
It's kind of like when Jesus dealt with Lazarus and the disciples. He could have healed him from a distance.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't quite realize that. He said, when he got out of his sick, he didn't go directly to him. He went down to Judea. And then he told the disciples he was asleep. And when he got there, he raised him from the dead. He said, this happened for your sakes.
Right.
It wasn't for Jesus. I did this for your sake.
That's absolutely. And we spoke last Wednesday on the fact that Paul was converted to Christ in the city of Damascus, not on the road. He was told to go into the city, and he'd be told what he'd have to do. So he was converted in the city, but he wasn't ready to start preaching. His desire was to start preaching the Christ that he had persecuted, but God took him where? Into the Arabian desert for 3 years to prep him, to prepare him to be the preacher that he would be. And these lessons that Jesus is sharing with his disciples are for the very same purpose. I'm not going to be with you forever, but I've got to do my best to prepare you for your mission, for your work, to carry on the gospel to all the world. Yes, sir.
He points out that they were fearful, lacking in faith, because that's the area where they need to work on.
Mm-hmm.
And he demonstrated it in this dramatic way by just calmly saying, peace, be still, and stop. And you saw the response. You can. You do have this power. Why were we fearful?
Yeah. And again, just the question that they've seen this type of power before. They've seen it demonstrated, but it was also demonstrated on others. This was an exhibition involving themselves. So there are a lot of different aspects of what's going on here, but still, yes.
They're human beings,
Right.
and you have storms coming, that you've been through before, probably a dozen times, been out there on the street. Jesus is asleep, well, we better wake him up, he might drown. And he doesn't know what's going on, they're just human.
Well,
You gotta put yourself in their place.
true, but their question was, save us. They knew he could, but still.
I prayed many a time when we're having storms, God, don't let us have to do it.
Yeah.